Okay, so now we're on to the question type 2, the vocabulary questions. First of all, good job getting through the factual information and detail questions. Now, with this one, obviously the most important thing is that you have at least an intermediate level of vocabulary and, of course, the intermediate level of English skills, like I mentioned in the last video. But vocabulary is good for this one. However, this is one thing that most people, most teachers, most textbooks, and most other training courses probably don't tell you. In fact, I know that most of them don't tell you this, is that you actually don't need to know a lot of vocabulary to handle the vocabulary questions. And that is because all of the answers for the vocabulary questions are actually in the reading passage. So you do have to have at least an intermediate level of English skills, and obviously having at least that level of vocabulary is going to help you. However, the questions of the vocabulary type are going to be asking you about words where you can get the meaning from the context of the actual reading passage. So here's an example of what it looks like. The word claim in paragraph 1 is closest in meaning to. Now, this is another thing that will give you a clue right away that this is a vocabulary question, is because the word will always be highlighted somehow, usually in a gray box like this. So that way you don't really need to worry about identifying this question type. Like with the last one, we talked about how to identify the question types to save your time. Obviously, you'll see that this is a vocabulary question right away when you just look at it without even having to read anything. Now, a lot of times, you might actually know the meaning of the word. Okay, so here we say the word claim. Well, maybe you already know what the word claim is. To state something as true. Okay, that's true. That's a true answer. A large piece of land. Well, that's also a definition of the word claim. A type of shellfish that is often served in cream soup. Now, this is another example of one of the types of tricks that they use. This is actually a description of a clam, not a claim. So they might give you a definition of a word that sounds very similar to the one that's in question, and to take and assume as one's own. Now, here's the tricky part. All three of these are actually definitions to the word claim. This is the most common definition. So one way that you could save time is to pick the answer which you think is the best. But another trick or a trap from this one, and we'll get into the tricks and traps in another video if you are in the master courses or the TOEFL Dominator course. But another thing here is they often will give you more than one answer which are actually true. So you'll actually have to go to the reading passage to make sure that it actually is the correct answer. So one thing with this one is that this question type is designed to test one's ability not only to decipher how a word is described in the context or paragraph of the sentence, but also distinguish between a common definition of the word and its possibly different meaning within the context of the sentence or paragraph. So what I'm saying there is that one of the ways that this question type tries to trick you is that they use definitions which are not the most common. So that's one of the tricks that you have to look out for with this question type. So let's take a look at some of the examples that we have in the course here. Okay, so here's the first example that we have. The phrase took place in the first sentence is closest in meaning to. Okay, well here we don't have a single word, but we have the phrase took place. So if you're at the level of taking the TOEFL exam, you should probably already know the meaning of this phrase. But let's just pretend for the sake of this description that you don't. Now, the word took is the past tense of the verb to take something. And place is usually referring to a location. Now, if you already know this phrase, you probably know that that's not what this phrase means. This is what we call an idiomatic phrase, meaning that when the words are put together, they have a completely different meaning than the actual words individually. So we have a few different examples here. One way that you can save time is also if you know the answer, you could just guess it. So happened. Well, that's one of the answers. Let's assume that you know what this phrase is. Well, then you would know that happened is what the phrase took place means. Was located. Okay, well, this is an answer choice for those people that might not know what the phrase means. So they think place, located. Locate, those two things are similar. So maybe they would choose this one. Was built. Well, that's probably in reference to something from the actual reading passage. And was placed. Here's another trick that they use, is to use a word in a slightly different form that is the word in question or the phrase in question, and also one of the answer choice. Was placed, took place. Okay, so maybe a person who is nervous and panicking would think, well, it must be that one because they're similar. But this is not the case, obviously. Well, obvious to most of you who would be taking the TOEFL. So let's go to the reading passage. Now here, assuming that we didn't know what the phrase took place was, we didn't know that it meant happened. So we think maybe it was located. So we have to read the phrase or read the sentence that the phrase is in. Now, luckily, the phrase or the word will also be highlighted in the text. So you don't have to bother with any of the other sentences here. You just read the first one. The initial design and construction of the temple took place in the first half of the 12th century during the reign of Suryavaram II. Okay, well, in that sentence, there's nothing to do with taking anything, and there isn't really any reference to the location, so maybe it isn't this one. It doesn't have anything to do with located. Well, let's see. The initial design and construction. Construction matches with built, so maybe it's that one, but the construction of the temple was built. That doesn't necessarily make sense. So, even if you didn't know what the actual meaning of the phrase was, you can also try inserting the phrase or inserting the answer choice into the sentence. Now, you might need to change the form a little bit, but for this one, the initial design and construction of the temple happened in the first half of the 12th century, because they're talking about the construction that's an event that happened in the first half of the 12th century. So that one actually fits there. So that's one of the techniques that you can use. If you didn't know that this was the answer, then you could try to stick it into the place of where the phrase was or the word was in the sentence, and if it fits, perfect. Choose that one and move on. Now, with this one, since you're all geniuses out there and you already know that took place means happened, and there aren't any other answer choices that are also the same. Like with the last example, we have 3 answer choices that are our definitions. So with this one, we don't. We have just this one. So if you already knew it, you could just guess it and move on to the next one. But if you didn't know it, you could try to put the different answer choices into the sentence and see if it fits that way. Let's take a look at the next one. So here we have the question, the phrase marked by in the passage is closest in meaning to. Okay, so looking at the answer choices, marked by, stained and marked. Well, maybe you would know that stained and marked are similar. Like if you have your shirt stained, then it's been marked. You have a mark on your shirt, something like that. Marked can also be referring to indicating something. Marked is also another way of saying indicated, so that one could be it. Tagged, that's similar to, if you were a person who was interested in graffiti. If the wall has been tagged, then it has been marked by someone's painting. So that could be a possible synonym. And known for, well, that's a little bit different. So let's assume that we don't know the answer here, and this one is not really very clear. So even if you did know, it could be more than one of these. So you'd have to go back to the reading passage. So Klimt's golden phase was marked by positive critical reaction and financial success. Well, stained doesn't fit, even though those two are kind of synonymous. So stained is out. Klimt's golden phase was indicated with positive critical reaction and financial success. Well, grammatically that fits, but what do they mean by indicated with positive? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Klimt's phase was tagged positive critical reaction. That doesn't fit. It was known for. Okay, so we have 2 possibilities where they fit into the sentence. Klimt's golden phase was indicated with positive critical reaction. Klimt's phase was known for. That one seems to fit a lot better. Okay, so let's assume that if you weren't exactly sure and you have two choices that seem to fit, just choose the one that seems better. And this one, known for, seems better. And if you read through the entire reading passage, or if you read through the rest of this section, then you would find out that that is indeed the answer. But you can save time just by, you don't need to read the rest of these. So here, the one answer that actually is the correct answer is the one that seems like the most different meaning from the actual phrase by itself. So this is one of the things that they like to do with this example type, is they use answers that if you don't look at the reading passage, it doesn't make sense. If you do look at the reading passage, it's the only one that does make sense. So that's another thing that you need to look out for. Now, I want to go over to something that I wrote on the page with the official summary by the creators of the exam. In that video, they state that the words in question, the words that are being tested, are those that you should know by the time you enter a university. Now, as it says here, that's true, but they also say they are not usually words that you can guess from the context. As I state here, I completely disagree with that. Almost every example that I have ever seen for this question type is exactly the opposite of what they say here. The words and phrases that they test for with the vocabulary words, with the vocabulary question type, are almost always words that you can guess from the context. Some of them are very obvious and you might know the word right away, like with like took place. We know that it means happened. Okay, that is a phrase that you should know by now. But with the rest of the words, they try to choose words where it's actually defined in the reading passage, or it is words that they are words or phrases that you can guess from the context. So their statement there is completely wrong. Like I've mentioned before, they did an excellent job of making an exam, which is actually really cool because it functions in the way that a person learns. It's testing, as I said many times before, it tests not what you know, but it tests your ability to learn. So I really love the exam, but some of the things that they say about how to handle the question types and things like that, it's not really true. So they're not professionals on how to take the exam. They're professionals on how to create exams. So I completely disagree with that statement. I just wanted to mention that in this video because I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. Like I said, I think they made an excellent exam, but not all of the statements that they make in the official videos about the different question types is actually true. And I say that based on about 10 years of experience with this exam, and by talking to numerous of my students who have taken the exam, and they tell me about their experiences afterwards, what was new for them, what was different, what we talked about in the class. So I say this with absolute surety that this is not true. So just wanted to point that out. Now, in the last video, we talked about vocabulary. Now, this is the vocabulary question type, but like I stated in the last video about the factual information and detail questions, that you do not need to study specific vocabulary for the TOEFL exam. And I'll say it again. You do not need to study specific vocabulary for the TOEFL exam. And by that I mean you don't need to study specific topics, because you will have no idea what topics are going to be on the exam, and it still wouldn't matter because they might use some subset of that topic which has its own specific vocabulary. So if you studied all the vocabulary that was related to a certain topic, they still might come up with new things to test. And all of the vocabulary questions that they will ask they absolutely are defined in context, or you can get the definition based upon the implied meaning from the context. So that being said, there are ways that you can increase your vocabulary for the TOEFL exam, and that is with the GiveMeSomeEnglish TOEFL database. I mentioned it before in the last video lesson about the database and how you can use it. Remember, anywhere you are on the course, you can either, if you see a word, you can click the word or any words. If you find a word in any of these descriptions, just copy the word, go to the database and try to look it up. Now, it's separated into 3 categories here because there are so many links. So if you have a word that starts with the letter C, you go to A through E, obviously, and then scroll down, letter C, they're all alphabetic. So this is one of the categories that has a lot of words, but you can find the word pretty quickly. So let's say that the word is considerably. Well, you click on that. It takes you to the pronunciation portal with the actual word. It tells you exactly how to pronounce the word with a lot of extra information. You click on the word itself. It takes you to the Wiktionary page where you get the definition. You also get the etymology, the different pronunciations. Sometimes it'll have a British English pronunciation and American English pronunciation. And it usually gives you the different forms of the word. And a lot of times it will give you synonyms and antonyms to the word. So there is a lot of information that's all linked up directly to the course. And whether you are going through one of the examples, like with the reading passage, maybe there's a word in here that you don't know, just click the vocabulary. Because not all of these words will be linked. But anywhere you are, you click that vocabulary, it takes you to the database, and then you can find your words. So that is one way that you can actually study vocabulary that will be beneficial. And if you haven't watched the previous video, this database is created with the 5,000 most commonly used words in the English language, with additions of words that are what I call functional vocabulary. In other words, that's vocabulary that you will absolutely need to know in order to function in the exam. In other words, words that they use for the directions. So this is a great resource for you to help build your vocabulary. And just to summarize, remember all of the vocabulary words and phrases are going to be highlighted both in the question stem and the reading passage. One way that you can save time is if you know the phrase and there's no other answer, which it could be, such as this one. Maybe we knew the phrase took place and none of these others have anything to do with it. You know it, just skip it. Don't even need to bother with the reading passage and go to the next question. You can save time. If you have another one like this, there are more than one possible meaning, and then we find out by going to the reading passage that the actual answer is one that doesn't seem to fit. So that's one of the ways that you deal with that this question type. And of course, with all of the questions on the reading section, if you spend more than 1 minute on this question type, you're taking way too long. Or not this question type, on this question. If you spend more than 1 minute on any question in the reading section, you're taking too long. Just pick any answer, pick the best one that you can think of, and move on to the next one. Make a note of that question type or that specific question in the section. And then when you finish the reading section, go back to the one that you skipped over before, or the one where you just guessed on the answer, and see if you can find the actual answer. So that is the vocabulary question type in the reading section of the TOEFL IBT exam. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you in the next lesson.